If you've ever played through a video game version of a role-playing game like Skyrim, for example, then you may have noticed that they often include a tutorial scenario right before the game really gets going. This is to show you how everything works. Well, what if you could do that with your D&D campaign? Stick with me and I'll show you how. Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. If you're new to the channel, my name's Brian, and we release new videos weekly, so please consider subscribing and turning on the notifications so you don't miss out on any of the content. If you've convinced someone to give D&D a shot, or you have a player that's eager to get going, but they don't really know much about the basic rules, then I may have a good option for you. Today, I'm going to give you a template that you can use to help get new players up to speed quickly, all while building up to your first session. Let me start by saying that I'm purposely creating this template so that the included sample is basic and really straightforward, and I'm not even worried about railroading. I think it's actually useful to railroad here because what you're really doing is teaching the player how to use the basic game mechanics. And technically this is a ramp up to the actual adventure, so you're not taking away any player agency that has to do with the campaign itself. And to ease your preparation time, I'm going to include a link to a Google Doc with an example tutorial that you can copy and adjust however you'd like and whatever works best for you. Completely free. Just make a copy of the template and use it however fits your campaign. In this document, I'll reference where I found the information on Describe. You can use Describe to add or change the scenes and the descriptions of the people and the places and other elements to kind of make it your own. And by swapping out the descriptions whenever you need to run a tutorial, you can modify each tutorial every time you need to run one. So every player may have a different introduction to the rules, if you want to, or you can leave it the same, up to you. And this template should help you with pretty much any campaign that you're going to run, especially homebrew adventures, since it's so customizable and you can adjust it however you like. But if you're preparing to run the Lost Mine of Phandelver, for example, this could work for you too. Maybe you read through the adventure and you're a little worried that there needs to be a little bit more of a better connection between the PCs and Gundren Rockseeker, because that's kind of important to the campaign. You could totally run this tutorial session and lead up to arriving in a tavern where they meet Gundren and Sildar. And then just roleplay the scenario where Gundren gets to know the PCs and hires them to escort the wagon to Phandalin. So that way that kind of builds a bond between the player characters and Gundren, which again is a big motivating factor for the adventure. Also, if you're watching this before July 31st of 2022, I'm running a giveaway contest, and the winner receives a free D&D starter set that includes the Lost Mine of Phandelver adventure. So check out this video to find out more about both the D&D starter set and how you can enter the win. This template assumes a pretty classic scenario. The PCs will meet in a tavern, or an inn, or any combination of the two. You get the idea. And while many a DM has used this tried and true, although perhaps a little cliche method of kicking off their adventure, the tutorial scenario is a little different. It asks the question, what happened on the way to the tavern, or the inn, or wherever? The goal here is to allow the player to learn some basic game mechanics before anything is really at stake for their character. You could also run it separately for each player if you want, covering their trip and making it kind of unique, their own little mini solo adventure leading up to the real adventure. But you can also just hold this tutorial session for a combination of new players or even the whole group. The template includes exploration, combat, and social encounter. Those are the pillars of D&D. So if you decide to change things, just make sure you include all three of those pillars of D&D. And when you inevitably adjust these, make sure you strike a balance between introducing the player to the basic game mechanic and then explaining some of the character-specific elements. The idea that they'll be rolling a d20 and adding some stuff is pretty important. The basics of combat, attack rolls, armor class, hit points, and saving throws are important to everyone. But spellcasting and sneak attacks are important depending on the class, so it doesn't need to be covered in every tutorial. Just don't be tempted to cover all of the rules of D&D. You won't be able to, and even if you could, it would overwhelm the new player and kind of scare them off. Wait and explain some things as they come up during the actual adventure. And the essential idea is to set the expectation of learning things as they go, and that they will have fun even if they haven't figured out all the rules yet. Okay, let's take a look at the actual template so I can show you how to quickly plan a tutorial session for your players. All right, let's get into this template. So the purpose of the template is to help a brand new player, or even a brand new DM in some cases, learn some of the basic mechanics of the game. So this is related to 5th edition, by the way, but it could be adjusted for any tabletop RPG that you are playing. So I'm also going to include here a link to my affiliate Describe link. Now, this doesn't cost you any more. Actually, it gives you 10% off the first month of any paid subscription to Describe. And this is important because I use Describe kind of threaded throughout, so I didn't have to write anything myself, although you absolutely could. I just wanted to give you an easy way to do it, and Describe is amazing for this. So use Geek Philosophy as a discount code, or use the link right here in the document to get that 10% off. So the goal of this session is really to be a tutorial, so you need to let the players know that. If you're running this, let them know this isn't the game, this is before the game, so that they can ask any questions that they might have. You can prompt some things. You're going to give little practice scenarios just to kind of make sure that they're familiar with what's going on. So I have an introduction that you can use here. By the way, if you are running the Lost Mine of Phandelver, like I mentioned before, this may be perfect to run for all those people, especially if you're running a sort of lead-in encounter that is Gundren and the PCs in a tavern and him hiring them. The kind of let's already start out as hired may be an issue for some groups, but this will give you an idea to lead into how everybody meets and how Gundren hires the group to begin with. So this is what happens on the road to the tavern. This is what happens as they are traveling to get there. You can do this for one player, you can do it for a whole group, it's really up to you. So there's box text that I have here. You can insert an NPC name to kind of say, here's who you are meeting. And I have the Thirsty Thresher as the tavern that they're going for. Thirsty Thresher is one of the descriptions right here in Describe. So I used that one as a placeholder text. You can change it to whatever you like. This is your game. There's going to be 3 days of travel. Again, 3 days of travel by foot on the road was a description and Describe that I used the first piece for the first day, the second piece for the second day, and you guessed it, the third piece for the third day. So in this description here, I've used part of that and then part of it from another description that they had called the Rural Road. So you can see how I can use blocks of pieces and pull things together. It's pretty great. So this is giving me, again, the opportunity to introduce the concept of exploration to the player and prompt them with some questions. If they don't think to ask, is there anything you'd like to do before you go to sleep? Do you have any plans for what you would do if someone enters your camp? They're not playing a video game. This is the way the world works, right? So set the tone a little bit with this. But uneventful travel, other than that. The day 2 is split up into 2 parts. So there's morning travel where there's exploration again. The key here is to introduce the concept of investigation as a whole, or searching for things or discovering clues, that kind of stuff. It also lets you lead into what happens later in the day, which is your combat tutorial. You don't have to run this on a map. You can have this be complete theater of the mind, because what's happening here is pretty basic and you're doing it just to explain certain things like initiative and rounds and turns and actions and bonus actions and things like that as you go. Don't get too deep into all your explanations here. You just want to run a scenario and let things pop up as you go. So you roll for initiative, who goes first, who goes next. It'll make a little bit more sense as they actually do these things. But you definitely want them to win, and they should also take some damage though. So you want to make sure that they understand how hit points work. I wouldn't take them to 0, but tell them what would happen if they do. That's probably a good way to let them know. You can explain things like death saves, but only if it makes sense for that time. Just be cinematic. Really have good descriptions here. And ask the players to do that too. Ask them, draw it out of them. Ask them to describe what they're doing. Get the most out of the experience here, because it's helping them understand, okay, now I'm getting a feel. Even though I'm not really playing yet, I'm kind of getting a feel for what D&D is all about. Also, this is sort of a bandit / ruffian camp. You're kind of assuming they're the ones that did that to the cart, but I've used a description here of a hooded bandit, just pulled from Describe and plopped right in. The statistics are not anywhere found as official. It's just I made them up, so really easy to hit them. It's an AC of 10, really easy to kill them. It's a hit point of 3, and they're not going to do too much damage, just 2 points of damage if they hit. When they get to the third day, they're now going to have a social interaction. In this case, what I'm doing is making this a newly minted town guard. They're really nervous, first day on the job, and they're supposed to go to some location, maybe a homestead, maybe a farm, something like that, and they're trying to act as if they know what they're doing. This gives you opportunity to pull in all of those things that are social interactions. So, how are they reading this? Do they have to convince them of anything? Do they have to try to persuade them that, hey, we saw some bandits down there. You should probably go back and talk to your bosses and let them know that we got some bandits. It may not even come up, but this is your chance to have them talk to someone. It doesn't matter. The point is you want to have social interaction at some level so they understand how it works in the game. And then finally, you want to wrap up the session. So you're going to let them know, hey, we're going to close this out. The next time you'll play is this date, this time. We're going to be pulling together and picking up from there. Are there any other questions that you have? Is there anything that we did that didn't really make sense to you? Do you want me to go over anything again? All that kind of stuff. But then you can kind of wrap things up with this box text, so to speak, to show them the tavern that they made it to and describe what it looks like and what it smells like and what the landscape's like and all of those things. Again, I used Describe to use the example here, which is the Thirsty Thresher that we talked about before, and this Thirsty Thresher's description is here, and you could use it or switch it out for something else. But this is the essence. You want to make sure you're hitting exploration with a little bit of investigation, meaning not just the road and what it looks like and finding things out there, but when you find something, how do you dig in a little deeper? There's combat, and then you have social interaction. All this will be editable because it'll be a template that you can just copy over to your own Google Drive and, make changes as you need to, but that's the gist of it. Thanks for sticking with me, and I hope you found this idea of a tutorial session pretty useful. Let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions on how to improve this template, or if you have another way to tackle this topic completely. I'd like to leave you with a quote about tutorials from the late author and journalist Christopher Hitchens. At Oxford, one was positively encouraged to take wine during tutorials. The tongue must be untied. Cheers.